Our final design was a lot simpler than what we originally planned. We wanted to use air pressure from a PVC pipe, and we're going to constrict the outlet of it, and we're going to launch a Nerf dart with that. That turned out to be harder than we thought, especially getting an airtight chamber and a spring to compress correctly and then release. So we decided to go with just a elastic crossbow-like design to launch it. We used a lot of the same parts that we had in our original design, mostly the PVC pipe, which we cut into our track, and the wood that we used just to keep the frame. It was about the same idea, except a lot simpler. Instead of using a Nerf dart, we used a foam ball, and I think that worked okay. We spent a lot of time in the wood shop prototyping, and we kind of did a ground up approach where we built something and that didn't work. We add a little bit to it, that didn't work.
So originally our projectile was going to be an arrow-shaped foam dart that was hollow in the middle. It was going to sit on a small, thin piece of copper tubing. And that copper tubing was attached to a PVC reservoir that was pretty thick, and behind it there's a spring and a rubber plunger on the end. The rubber plunger was supposed to be airtight against the diameter of the PVC pipe, but after buying the supplies and doing some testing, we found that we couldn't get a good enough seal to actually force the projectile through the copper tube. So we moved on to just using the spring itself, and we moved on to a foam golf ball, a practice golf ball, and we were just going to use the actual force of the spring itself instead of compressed air to launch the object.
One of the main points of our project was to use a zero energy state. So basically a zero energy state is when there's no energy on the projectile launcher without any human interaction in it. So for our projectile launcher, how we used zero energy state was by dropping a weight which pulled tension on an elastic string, which in turn launched our projectile. So to use without dropping the weight, there was no energy involved, there was no tension on the elastic string, and this was our zero energy state.
So one thing that we would have done differently had we started over is when we made our new design for like the crossbow leg structure, what we would have done is what we originally had was we had our golf ball sitting in a little cup, and when we drop the weight, it releases the cup and thus the ball will launch. But what we should have done from the start was flip the cup around is what we ended up doing, so the cup ends up just hitting the ball off the track. And up until about the last day we were building, we had the ball in the cup, and then right before Fed Day we ended up flipping it around, and it ended up being more successful and launched the ball even further than before.
One thing I would have changed about our project is that instead of doing trial and error and constantly changing the structure of our actual project, I wish we would have laid out all the different mechanisms that were possible and tried them all out on a smaller scale before applying them into the actual full-on structure.
So we had a great projectile launcher. One thing I would change would be the structure. We started off with a low base and kept building on top of it, which led to a weak structure. If I had a chance to redo it, I would start with a much stronger structure, because it would also help with the tension of the string.
I think Fed Day went really well, considering our project performed pretty much exactly how we expected it to. While towards the end we actually were able to develop enough force to launch the projectile the correct distance, but we didn't have a very good means of keeping it precise. So our first shot was a little bit short, our second shot curved to the left, and our last shot actually was directly vertically on the target, but it shot clear over it, which was way better than what we expected. So I'd say overall it was about par.
This project was a lot of fun, but one word of advice I would give to next year's freshmen would be to do a lot of testing. Don't just start off.
Definitely save room for testing.
Next year, just to make sure that you save some time at the end of the project before it's due to test it. And
My advice I would give to future freshmen is really give yourself a lot of time, start as early as you can, and do a lot of testing before you really follow out a plan. Lay out a couple different ideas you have, see what works the best, and I really focus on that before you really make a solid plan, start purchasing things and putting a lot of time and effort into it.